All right, Jack, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
So I don't like the term content because it sounds kind of sterile, and it can be anything. It doesn't have to be good, but it kind of is the right word. So what's your background in outdoor content creation?
Mixed, I would say. So it's the first time you and I have met each other. So I am Jack Westerheide from Central Ohio. I have had an interesting career background. So went to Ohio State. I didn't really know what I wanted to do going into college.
You went to Ohio State?
Ohio State.
I thought it was
Yes.
supposed to be the Ohio State University.
You never know. It depends on who I'm introducing myself to.
Guys,
so it might ruffle some feathers, but yes.
You're not on
Actually,
the
I have
football
two
team,
degrees
so
from
it's different.
Yeah. I have 2 degrees from the Ohio State University. Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, but my family is a bunch of doctors. So it was either medicine or go figure it out. So knew I didn't want to go into medicine. So I knew I loved traveling. So that traveling turned into, international business. International business turned into marketing, turned into consulting. So I've done a little bit of everything. I think I told you the job before I'm in now was very specific to the outdoors. So I worked for a marketing agency. We were very much in the content production world. So big cameras, taking very expensive cameras where they're not supposed to go. It's a great job for a variety of, people related reasons, had to leave that job and now ended up what I'm doing now, which is kind of like marketing, brand strategy, consulting. So not as much on the content creation side, more on, consumer research, market insights, kind of using insights from what people say, do, act, feel, translate that into a strategy, whether it's a marketing strategy, operational strategy, how do you reach those people at the right time, at the right message to get them to take a desired action? So that's kind of what I'm doing now, more specific in the health and wellness space. So sometimes I get to dip my toe back in the outdoor world, but for the most part, it's a lot of healthcare, CPG, wellness, all that stuff. So that's where I'm at now.
I've talked to a lot of students, high school students over my 22-year career, and we've talked engineering. We've talked about, all these different pathways. I don't know if I've ever talked to any student about the pathway to become a consultant. How does consulting happen? How do you achieve, I guess maybe it would be how do you get to the point where you have enough knowledge about something that someone would pay for the consulting? And must be a massive market for consultants.
I don't know. Consulting is a very interesting job, I would say. Never did I intend, when I'm, going to college for the first time, I'm going to be a consultant. I really didn't even know what consulting was. I didn't even know what marketing was, to be totally honest. Like I said, my dad, my grandpa, all my uncles, they're all doctors. So there was really not a lot of there's a lot of options. You can do a lot of different things. It was really going to college to go figure it out without having any real idea of what I was going to do other than probably business, because that seemed like a very catch-all bucket for a lot of different things. So yeah, to your point, I'm 28 years old and I get paid a decent amount of money to tell people what I think and what I think they should do, which is an interesting position for someone who's not even 30 years old yet. But I think my variety of backgrounds where I've worked for big companies, I've worked for small companies, I've worked for agencies, I worked on the brand side. All of that different experience definitely helps me kind of see a lot of different stuff. I've talked to a lot of different people. I've got kind of a variety of interests myself. So I read a lot. I talk to a lot of people. That kind of helps you, give a sense of what's going on in different industries, especially when it comes to a lot of my job in marketing. Love it or hate it, has to deal with how people, interact with social media on a day-to-day basis, whether that's from a personal perspective or professional perspective, that is also changing day to day. So I think just a variety of different backgrounds that led me into this current position kind of helps me pinpoint, understand, what are other people doing, and then how do you tap into that as a brand or business?
Yeah, that idea of you need to be old enough to have the knowledge of how things work has kind of been turned on its head by the internet and social media, YouTube, because things have changed. Your old guard of content creation, of movie making, of filmmaking, of whatever, all that stuff is completely, I wouldn't say completely obsolete, but pretty close to obsolete. And all these new models need to be, I guess, people need to be educated on how this sort of stuff sort of works. And so a younger person who might understand it, like it's kind of the hot time to be that, or maybe it's already even past. You talk to some of these people who got in 2008, 2010, 2013, and that's when that was the real peak time for your YouTube show, your public land hunting type stuff. And now YouTube is just flooded with very similar content. The models of hiring an ambassador to hike around in your gear. Now you get so much free stuff or free content by people tagging you in these social media posts. You don't really need to have ambassadors anymore because you get so much of that stuff. So it's changing so fast.
Yeah. I don't know. I would say too, like I've always thought that my age group, so I was born in 97, is a very interesting like age group, or almost like a sub generation in between generations, where we're not technically, we are Gen Z, we're the older Gen Z, but we're not the Gen Z that grew up with TikTok and Instagram and we're like dancing on social media every single day, where it's like social media really didn't get big for me until like the tail end of, high school, heading into college. That's when stuff really started exploding. So it's like I do remember a time before social media was like everything, but I'm also young enough to know like the the importance of, how to use all these tools. So it's an interesting thing. Like I saw a post the other day about, it was like from an HR hiring manager. It's like, did you go to high school before or after ChatGPT? That's like a new, like, and a determining factor of like, what is your like education level when it comes to like AI and doing your own work and stuff like that. So kind of an interesting thing. Like younger people I don't think they'll get the same like educational experience, just based on people who had to do high school, college, pre-AI, pre-social media, not only from like learning perspective, from like a business perspective. It's like you just talked about content, ambassadors, YouTube, stuff like that. Yeah, that exploded in like the mid to, teens, 2000s, and that's already changed where it's like, when you talk about who people trust, we talk about the new truth a lot in marketing, where it's like, even in health and wellness, do you trust your doctor? Do you trust this person that you follow on TikTok? Stuff like that, where there's kind of a whole new perspective on where you get your information from. So very interesting.
Yeah. Do you have any other insights about just the impact of AI in that space, in the influencer marketing in the health and wellness space? Because like you said, like you can have really good information because it sounds good. It might not actually be good information. So what have you seen?
Yeah. I mean, that it comes down to what we were talking about too, where it's like, when I started my career, like I had to learn a bunch of stuff by, doing a lot of like first party, consumer research, where it's like you were going out, either talking to people face to face, you're pulling them into like a panel, you're getting, survey responses, both quantitative, qualitative research, versus now you can, basically create like an AI model and basically tell AI to be like, act like you are, a sample size of 1,000 people with these specific interests and tell me what they like. So it's a very different, way of going about things. I think both are valuable, but I also think, going back to knowing what it was like before you could use AI to gather insights is also, I think, a pretty important perspective I think that I have. So yeah, I mean, there's a ton of stuff with how AI is impacting everything from health and wellness to the outdoors. Talk about content creators. It doesn't take you very long to give me a script to talk about this new bow or this new like piece of gear or this camo. And you can get talking points from the brands themselves. But at the end of the day, ChatGPT does not do any actual thinking. It's basically guessing what word sounds the best after this word. So like you said, it sounds great, but you really have to have some type of verification before you start putting that stuff out in the world to be like, this is factual. For gear reviews, doesn't matter as much, but especially once you start getting into that health and wellness, anything to do with like nutrition, stuff that you put into your body, whether it's medicine or supplements or whatever, that is a whole new gray area where you have people coming off as experts who probably aren't really experts. They're getting their script from ChatGPT.
Do you think that's how it's primarily being used? There's a lot of fear, especially as a high school teacher. When ChatGPT first came out, there was just so much resistance, and it's terrible. It's going to ruin everything. But I thought, okay, well, hold on a second here. This can maybe also be used as a tool. So I got to be able to have conversations with the kids, and some of the kids are using it as like flashcards and there's positive ways to do it too. So is it helping connect us with, is it amplifying good information, or do you think it's used mostly like AI in general, not just chat GPT?
Yeah.
Is it amplifying bad information, or is it helping connect good information, or is it both, or does it just really kind of depend on your algorithm?
Yeah. I've been asked this question a couple of times, family members, friends, colleagues. Like my perspective as a 28-year-old person who uses AI every single day, it's part of my job. It's a tool. And I think if you rely on it for more than what it is as a tool, it can get you in trouble real quick. It's just kind of like social media, where it's like the more you put into ChatGPT, the more it will give you in terms of like what you're training it to think. So if you're relying on it from everything from writing your grocery list to writing your high school English paper, it's going to be reliant on what you're giving it. And same thing with social media algorithms. It can just like put you into that sounding chamber where it's the same stuff that's going to come up. If that's positive, great. If it's negative, that's probably not so great. But I mean, as a tool, it's great. Like I worked with a startup that's, has partnerships with like 60 universities around the United States where they're using it as kind of like you said, flashcard building tool, study building tool. It's not giving you the answers, but it's helping you learn and kind of consolidate a large amount of information, which is what I primarily use it for, where it's like, you know, I don't have time to read all these like 800-page case studies or like consolidate all of this like big data set. Can you kind of give me the highlights? But then I will use my own brain to come to a conclusion, do kind of some manual analysis on that data. So from that perspective, I love AI. It just helps you kind of get better faster. But it really depends on what you're using for. It's like anything else. It's a tool. You can use tools in good ways or bad ways. Just kind of up to you,
Yeah.
depending on how you want to use it, what you get out of it.
As far as careers go, do you think it's having more profound impact on the entry level, maybe eliminating some of those entry level jobs, or is it kind of gutting the middle management job, or when we talk about job replacement, who might be the most obsolete if they don't have the skills to do it themselves and they're not using it as a tool?
Yeah, that's a tough question. I think it probably has a bigger impact on like entry level, kind of that like, I don't know if you get into like middle management, but definitely entry level jobs where people are feeling they don't have to have as many people on their team. It's restricting headcount year over year. I think the other thing that like I've seen kind of in my own network is even during the hiring process where people are either losing their job for whatever reason, doesn't have to be like an AI related reason as to why they lost their job. But when you go to apply for jobs, you just have like, if you go to any job posting on LinkedIn, you'll see, 100 plus people applied to this job, 1,000 plus people applied to this job. Well, I think it's a safe bet to say probably 90% of those people probably use ChatGPT to either update their resume, write a cover letter, stuff like that. I mean, the HR managers are using AI to synthesize all those applications to pull out, specific parts that then they're using to, accept people into an interview or, reject them on the spot. So it's really taking a lot of like the humanity out of the hiring process itself, where people are using AI to submit, HR are using AI to review. And, in most cases, you're never even getting a face-to-face conversation in a hiring process if you even get an interview. So it's definitely having a massive impact, I think, on the workforce from applying to job to once you're in the job, how it's impacting your day-to-day skill set.
So you're mostly in the health and wellness, but you are in the process of starting or have started this new project, Scout. Talk to me about that.
Yeah. So it's definitely a side project, kind of just a personal passion of mine. So
is it Scout or Scout
I guess
Studio?
I got to go back. Either one. Honestly, we're not that rigid right now. So yeah. So I guess my background, I don't know how long you've been subscribed to my other newsletter, the Field Review, but I did not grow up hunting and fishing. So definitely like an outdoor kid. Like I'm an Eagle Scout, did a lot of camping growing up, even did like sport shooting, like sporting clays, all that stuff. So I've been kind of running in parallel with like hunting and fishing, but my dad didn't do it. It was never something that I really knew a lot of people that did it growing up. So it was never something that I got into. So I was definitely part of the COVID wave of people who during lockdowns wanted to find ways to get outside. And for whatever reason, I think it was probably watching Meat Eater on Netflix during lockdowns seemed like a interesting thing that I wanted to go pick up. And then in my family tree, actually, so my great grandfather was a huge outdoorsman in Central Ohio, even owned an outdoor sporting goods store. So sold guns, fishing equipment. I mean, he would drive from middle of nowhere, Ohio, out to Wyoming to go like hunt deer because there were no deer in Ohio in the 50s. So that kind of generational gap kind of jumped a generation. And then I kind of felt like I picked up kind of where he left off. I've got all those old like hunting tags and logs and notes and books and stuff like that. So from that perspective, I've always, once I got into it, I've loved kind of this idea of the culture, traditions, kind of how hunting and fishing is changing generation to generation. So pairing that with what I do day to day with a lot of consumer research, market insights, that's really where Scout, the idea came about is, when people talk about their experience with hunting and fishing, they're usually complaining in a Facebook group or it's in a text message or they're talking about, stories of their greatest hunts around the campfire. A lot of that gets lost. I mean, in my own family tree, like we have some of those stories just based on what he wrote down or like in old notebooks. I think there's some old like videotapes and stuff from back in the day, some fishing trips. But other than that, it's really whatever my grandpa remembers from stories that his dad told him, he has then told me, but everything else is gone. Those stories will never be able to be returned. So that's really what this is like, how do you kind of tap people to either remember their own stories, tap into, what are traditions changing, especially when we talk about technology, like, is that going to help or hurt hunting and fishing, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years down the road? So really starting to collect all these data points from individuals to then tell the broader story of hunting and fishing. I think there's a lot of different avenues I want to take. Figuring out this process is kind of a different beast. Collecting, I think right now we have around 40 people who are in the platform. Ideally, I'd love to get to 100 plus just to have a good sample size, multiple states, kind of multiple interests. You don't really want to be asking, deer hunters specific questions about, upland hunting. So you got to have enough people in this platform to get good results. But yeah, we're slowly building it. And I think it'll be a good tool, not only for people to kind of see how their perspective relates to other people, but also to kind of track changes over time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the technology piece is super interesting. I see people make really interesting, good posts on Facebook. And like you said, it's not going anywhere. You can have these forums that people are talking about gear, this or that. And like, that's probably the feedback that a company needs about their gear rather than some 5-star or even 1-star. Whenever I look at the ratings online, I see a whole bunch of 1-stars, and it's because it wasn't shipped on time or didn't get there. And this has nothing to do with the product. Are these pants waterproof or are they not? So if you give it 1 star because it was 2 weeks late, that doesn't tell me anything. And so you could throw off the entire, if this is a new product and there's only 7 ratings and you have 1 star because of whatever, or on the flip side, you give it 5 stars because you put them on, like that's a first impression. That tells me nothing about the actual gear. And so we keep doing that stuff to each other. We go on forums and we just say, this is the stupidest, or this is the worst thing ever. Or even this rain jacket didn't work and I was soaking wet. Well, you may have been soaking wet because you were hiking in the rain and that was all perspiration because there was nowhere for the moisture to go. So that could have been sweat and not rain. Yeah. So it's really difficult to trust, and I don't trust the written reviews. I want people who look like they've been wearing this brand or this jacket or this whatever for like 20 hunts. So is it really durable, or is it just, it survived 1 trip and that doesn't tell me anything?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, even me knowing kind of how the sausage is made on the back end and like collecting reviews from, past purchasers, it's like in some cases they're getting paid for those reviews. When you talk about influencers, ambassadors, like it's hard. Like, and that's where I'm seeing a big shift where it's like for the last, I would say, being generous, 10 years, influencers have really become the way for people to find out about new things and have that kind of level of trust. But I mean, I'm going to use Cam Hanes as an example. Like was with Origin, they were all like big Origin USA guys, and now he's with Sitka. So it's like, was Origin not good? Like, is Sitka better? Like, it's hard now because that these influencers are taking kind of the biggest or the best deal, whatever makes sense for them. I'm not saying anything about campaigns or whether or not you should be with Sitka or Origin, but that's kind of the shift where people are finding it harder to trust influencers
Hmm.
because of this now, the influencers, there's an influencer world basically.
Yeah.
So it operates differently. It doesn't hold the same value, I think, as it did, 5-10 years ago. So there's a whole mess of stuff that goes into, gear reviews, product reviews, trust, brand loyalty, all that stuff is stuff that I'm thinking about, not so much for hunting and fishing, but for health and wellness. But that's really what we're trying to get at with Scout is authentic reviews, real stories, stuff that is verified by people who are out there, in the grit, in the rain, providing their real perspective on things.
Yeah. Yeah. When you look at why a free agent would leave a professional sports team, sometimes it's like, oh man, they respect this. There's nothing wrong with the organization, but it was just a contract thing. Or maybe it was the agent and the other agent or the general manager didn't get along, or it was the owner or something about it. And we hear so much about the behind the scenes eventually about what happened and why that player ended up on a different team or on a rival or this or that. But in the outdoor space, like, wait, why is he with another brand? And I think there are some who definitely have the feel of they've never passed up an opportunity to, pitch this tent or this tent or this tent. It's just, I've never met a promotion I didn't like. And that sort of attitude, you think this is a mercenary. I don't trust anything that this person says. It's just a matter of how much they can get out of this thing. And they take a tent to Alaska for 3 days and they're glowing reviews about it. And I just don't trust it whatsoever.
Yeah, exactly. And then it's like, if you bought in, like, take like the Sitka versus Kuiu debate, which I think has been going on since the two of them were founded. Like, if you're one or the other and your favorite influencer switches brands, it's like, oh man, like, do I have to switch brands now?
Yeah,
do I have to go spend thousands of dollars because is Sitka not good anymore? It's questions like that where it's like, no, you're fine. But influencers kind of shift that perspective on what you want to buy for yourself. So
yeah, it's loyalty to something that you don't need to be loyal to. It's super expensive for the common folk to be able to afford a lot of this stuff, and so to burn your gear or get rid of your gear, it's like, man, that's what are you doing there? I remember here in Southeast Alaska when one of my buddies was kind of one of the first people who started wearing the full on Sitka everything. And it was funny because this was 2010, 11, something like that. And so it was, oh, look at that guy in Sitka. He must not be from here. He recently moved up, this and that. It was pretty funny. And then people started to, you start to wear the systems that are put together in such a way that the layering is made so much easier. And before that, it was, you were wearing Carhartt pants, so you were going to get soaked, or you were wearing Grundon's bibs, and then you were wearing kind of a misfitting hoodie underneath a rain jacket. But of course, hoodies aren't great. Or you're wearing a halibut jacket that's wool, and that's really, really going to make you sweat. So the efficiency and the layerability of the systems. So people started accumulating Sitka, and then the Sitka and Kuiu split. So then there was more Kuiu, and then now there's some First Light coming in, mostly with like the Coast Guard people from the lower 48. So it's funny to look around and just see all the brands representative.
Yep. Yeah. And they'll all, that goes back to the whole, like, the infighting between hunting and fishing community. Everyone's got these dumb opinions on not only how they do it, but what they wear while they're doing it. So again, those are all topics that I would love to cover kind of in some of these studies in Scout, is to be like, how much weight do people put behind, oh, you wear First Light, so we can't hunt together? Like, stuff like that. Are we just saying that to like troll people on social media, or are these like actually deep held beliefs that are going to, impact who you hunt with and how you hunt? So all interesting stuff.
Yeah. So I guess the big question, whether or not I'm going to make a Scout profile, is, do you wear Sitka or do you wear First Light, or are you Stone Glacier?
When I joined the agency, two of the guys that worked there, their brothers, were now lifelong friends. They were both into Sitka. So I'm like, I'm going to join the Sitka train. At that point, I was still wearing Walmart Boss Yoke, which I still wear, and it still does just fine. But no, it was kind of, we also did some work with Sitka at that time. So we were going on hunts, kind of getting gear to make sure everyone was in the right patterns for specific shoots. So I went down the Sitka tunnel, and I am still in that tunnel. So it works great. So I have no complaints.
Yeah, it's too expensive to change, and there's everything that you could want from that. And you start looking at these other brands, they know what the other brands are doing, and so they all have to be on a comparable level. Unless you're trying to be a budget brand, they're all going to be really, really good. They're going to have their pros and cons, and it's that competition is just making it so much better for the modern hunter because we have incredible stuff that's available to us. It might be pretty expensive, but the technology is just, it's unreal.
Yeah, no, definitely. And then they actually just opened up a Sitka store here in Columbus. So that's nice where you ever have any rips, tears, all that stuff, you can take it in, get it fixed. So it's nice to have now an actual physical retail store. I know they're kind of spread throughout the country, but it's nice to have one here close to home where if you do need something fixed, repair, there's an actual place to go take it into.
That was a big thing for me, being able to try on the Sitka stuff, because I wasn't, we obviously don't have a Sitka store here, and we have to do most of our shopping online. And the same thing with the Stone Glacier pack. I wear that just because I was able to try one on and felt it. So a buddy of mine has a Kifaru, and other people have Exo, but it was just availability. It happened to be there because when you're online shopping for something like a pack, like that's pretty scary. Same thing with boots. It's just, what am I able to try on? And my loyalty or the decision I made was based on that, not influencers. It was just happened to be there.
I mean, that's a whole nother, like, I do a lot of stuff with like consumer journeys. So like, what is your path to purchase from initial awareness through consideration to eventually making that purchase? And I mean, that's something that we talk about both with brands that I work with and just, marketing theory in general. Is like, when you think about the price point for a pair of waders, it's like $1,000. Like, that's a lot of money to spend on waders, especially if you can't go put your hands on it, try them out, test them out. You don't know anyone who has them. So when you talk about, some of these ad agencies who are running Facebook ads, Instagram ads, trying to get people to basically buy a pair of $1,000 waders off of Instagram, that is a tough ask, I think. So it all comes down to like, what is that balance of how much I'm going to spend versus, do I need this right now, versus have I been able to actually test and verify that this is going to hold up? So it's all stuff that plays into that, consumer journey as well.
Mm-hmm. Is there a bit of a shift? It seems like some of these prices the markup is pretty crazy because they've shifted maybe less from the common everyday person and more the people who are going to buy based on new style, new whatever. So they're looking more at the maybe upper middle class / wealthy person who's going to buy a new pair of waders every year, which is why they're jacking up the price, rather than just, hey, this person is the type of person we want, but we know they're not going to spend as much for as long. They're going to try to get the most out of these waders. So we're going to target the people who are more likely to open their wallet more frequently.
Yeah. Again, these are all fantastic questions. And I look back to, I think it was last year. So Outdoor Industry Association, they always publish that, basically like the industry and review report. And they track, retention, kind of the 3 R's that people always talk about in the outdoor industry. And when you look at, they look at everything. They're not just looking at hunting and fishing. They're looking at camping, overlanding, anything like outdoor industry related. The fastest growing segment of the outdoor industry is what they're calling the casual consumer. So the people they're only going out, I think it was less than 2 times a year. So, which begs the question, all these brands who are jacking up the prices, and I know there's a whole another kind of macroeconomic spin into that. Manufacturing overseas, made in America, all that stuff is all playing into that price. But I mean, prices have been expensive, whether you have tariffs or not, the last, 5-10 years.
Right.
So when we talk about, okay, how are we, making sure that we're bringing new people into the fold, we're bringing in new hunters, we're attracting, or retaining, our current consumers. It's like, well, increasing waders by $200-$300 every single year is probably not the best answer to that. Especially when we know that this idea of like the casual person who's only going out a handful of times a year, they're less likely to spend that amount of money. So it always makes me beg the question is, who is this for?
Right.
New gear, is it for the people who already have a pair of waders, or is this for the person who doesn't have a pair of waders buying their first pair? So all questions that I would love to ask brands if I had direct access to them, but in most cases I don't.
Yeah, it's just theory. It's just theory.
Yeah.
So if someone goes to scoutstudio.co and they build a profile, what do they do? What are they looking for? What's going on there with the program?
Yeah. So I'm like a duck behind the scenes. I'm paddling pretty quickly. So I've had this idea for a while, been building the website for a while. Kind of when I reached out to you last week, I think was really the first time where I've started sharing it with a smaller group of people. So still trying to build up the amount of profiles we have in there, clean up some stuff up on the back end, making sure that I have the ability to, track people's responses as well. So everyone's going to get kind of a unique user ID where once you fill out an initial profile, you don't have to fill that information out ever again. So the questions that you would get moving forward would be very specific to your interests. And then you basically input your user ID, and then I can pull all that stuff on the back end to kind of connect the dots almost based on kind of different levels of experience, how you answer different questions. And that's how we're going to use to kind of generate some of those insights. So that's what I'm doing right now is reaching out to more people, trying to get more people in there. I'm hoping to get our first kind of panel out there probably in the next month. So it just kind of depends on how many more people I can get in there and then start spreading the word to get more people involved, coming up with more kind of engaging questions to see what people want to know. But like I said, we're really flexible right now. Building that foundation, getting people in there. I think 2026 is probably going to be the year where we get things off the ground, more consistent basis, publishing some of these studies. So that's the goal, at least. But having a 6-week-old baby puts a wrench into that sometimes. So, and a full-time job.
Yeah, for sure. So if you build a panel, will other companies get good feedback from trusted panel members, or do we talk within the panel about products? How does that piece work?
Yeah. So that's kind of the piece. There's a lot of different ways, and I've done this research a lot of different ways. Some of it, when they talk about, 2 ways of primary research are quantitative and qualitative. So quantitative is you're really trying to get as many people to answer questions as possible and say, 70% of people said this in relationship to this question. Whereas the qualitative stuff, that's more of like the short answer response. How do you feel about XYZ topic? But really, I have let the best research results come from like asking very tailored, specific questions. So, one study might only be specific to, the impact of social media on hunting and fishing. Like, do you post a lot? Do you follow a lot of people? Are you thinking about, checking your phone when you're sitting in a tree stand? Stuff like that, versus asking you a wide range of questions every single time. Like, if we can go in kind of with an idea of like, what kind of answers do we want to get out of a specific study? That's really the goal. And it might only be, 3 questions, 5 questions, 7 questions that people can answer pretty quickly, give honest feedback. And then the next study, whether that's the next week, the next month, will be on a very different topic to try to get the best results at a very like granular level on specific topics related to the outdoors.
Interesting. I like the analytical piece. I think that's something that's been missing from the space because everything is like a shoot from the hip. This is how I feel in this moment. It's a very emotional response. And, what does it really mean except for expressing or articulating what someone felt in the moment, which might not be. There sometimes is a difference between what we think and what we feel in the moment. So we say something, but we mean something totally different. So that'd be pretty sweet to get some good feedback.
And I mean, that in itself is a huge factor in any primary research that you gather and there's all types of, psychological case studies and stuff where they talk about people will answer differently than they actually think. It also depends on whether they're answering in a group setting, if they're answering as an individual, if it's in person, if it's online, if it's a multiple choice short answer. So you always have to take that into consideration. Like nothing is ever 100% accurate. And people will change. Like if you ask the same person the same question 3 different times, a month apart, you might get 3 different answers.
Right.
So it's very dependent on what the mindset is in that very specific moment. But you have to take everything with a grain of salt. That's why I like asking a variety of questions. And you can kind of build in almost like a bell curve on like how people answer one question and how did they answer question 7. And then the results from those 2 answers are really what gives you your true answer into how someone feels about a specific topic. So there's a lot of psychology that goes into research, which I think pairs nicely with the psychology that goes into, you know, the outdoors.
Mm-hmm. So if you build a profile on there, what do you add to your profile? Is it a place where you can share things and your opinions to? Are there posting opportunities, or are you just your feedback is what is most sought and that's what you're providing?
Yeah. At the moment, no, there are no forums or message boards or anything like that. Down the road, maybe. But right now, it's really just first party research. So you're building a profile. That's what's going to inform kind of which questions you get asked, which panels you get to be included in. But also, like the other thing that I'm trying to do is, so for example, EHD is destroying the deer herd in Ohio right now. So this is also kind of sparking an interesting conversation for me, where it's like I'm a part of a bunch of, Ohio whitetail deer Facebook groups. And the ODNR is even using some of that as kind of some social listening to see what's going on kind of in the field down south in southern Ohio where they're getting hit the hardest. But people are reporting, I went out today, I didn't see any deer, or I saw one fawn, and they used to have, 20, 30 deer on their property. So it's stuff like that where I would love to get to a point where we have kind of like some sources in the field where then we could reach out to them to be like, hey, you're a trusted, verified source. Can we get some quotes? Can we get some data feedback from what you're seeing on the ground? Stuff like that. So we can kind of provide some kind of like informal reports, trends, case studies on what's happening out there that can be used by, state agencies, fish and wildlife agencies, stuff like that is kind of we're helping to gather what people are talking about in these Facebook groups, but in a more tangible, shareable way.
Nice. I like that. The social media forum, it's been done in a lot of different iterations and it's all very similar and the negatives are all the negative. But I like that. The idea of the verified feedback, I think it'll be good and helpful for other people rather than just an ego boost.
Yeah. Yeah. No part of me wants this to be like, hey, do you like this jacket? Thumbs up, thumbs up. Yeah, love it. Hate it. No, that is not what we're doing here. Like, and honestly, like the gear reviews, that kind of stuff, I think that'll be an important piece. But like really what I want to get to is more of like the intangible stuff. Like how are traditions changing from one generation to the other? Especially when I think about like I'm someone who taught myself how to do this, kind of what they refer to as like the adult onset hunter. Mm-hmm. Like what does that look like? Like how many people are out there that are like me? Are they having kids? Are they teaching their kids about the outdoors? More stuff along that lines than, branded questions like, would you buy X or Y? Like that stuff isn't as important to me as like, what does the future of the outdoor industry look like in 20 years?
Yeah. Yeah, the future of hunting in Alaska is going to be super interesting because there were so many films being made out of Kotzebue that the Federal Subsistence Board shut down non-federally qualified caribou hunts. So only if you're local, you can hunt there. If you live in Fairbanks, you're not federally qualified, you're not rural, so you can't hunt caribou there, which is crazy. And so it'll be interesting to see how many other areas of Alaska are going to use that as a way of keeping outside hunters out. We had the reduction of tags on Kodiak from 3 down to 1, the reduction of tags across, some people are looking at, someone proposed to the Board of Game here in Alaska to completely shut down hunting to non-locals on Prince of Wales Island for an entire year. So you couldn't even no non-resident, no anyone, totally shut it down for a year, not a reduction of tags. So with all the attention has come a little bit more conflict between locals and non-locals, and it will be interesting going forward to see what the hunting landscape in Alaska looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I mean, obviously this summer we dealt with the whole, public land sale. That was another interesting topic that, I would love to see like how, obviously we know a ton of people were involved in that and like calling their, state representatives and kind of voicing their opinions on stuff, which was great to see. In that case, social media was absolutely a great tool to kind of spread the word and get people engaged with something. But like, I would love to know if something like that happens again, like how much especially because my perspective as Ohioan, only like 4% of our state is public lands, and it is in most cases not managed very well for the average outdoorsman. So it's like, I support public lands, but I've never even hunted out west on public land, for instance. So it's important to me. I'm going to send the email and call the switchboard but I have a very different perspective on saving public lands than the guy in, Colorado or Wyoming or even Alaska. So how does that perspective shift between Midwest guys, Southern guys, East Coast guys that maybe don't have as free of access and as much public land to play with, but still are supportive because we're outdoorsmen and it still share those same beliefs and values. Yeah, this is all stuff that I think is important. It's just figuring out a way to get people to answer on it and provide feedback, even if it's not something they're thinking about on a day-to-day basis. So that's what I'm trying to figure out right now.
Yeah. Yeah, it would be interesting to see if something like that happened again, if there was that unity, because it was pretty cool how many people came together to kind of block that. But going forward, if there was a lot of people who kind of have this idea that it's the wealthy lower 48 hunters who are doing hunts that Alaskans will never be able to afford, well, I don't even care. And we're seeing that with the Road to Ambler and some of these other development things in Alaska, that I'm never going to be able to go on a hunt in that area unless there's a road punch through. So punch the road through. Hopefully one day it'll become public so I can at least access a piece of my state, because I'm not paying, $6,000, $10,000, $15,000. That's another thing that's going up astronomically, because people who are doing the flyouts, they're driving up the prices because there's so much demand. So your common folk are getting priced out. So people care about the outdoors, but then also, if I'm not benefiting, you might as well punch in the road and make some money from mining. And so it's pretty crazy.
Yeah. Well, I think this is a much bigger topic than anyone talks about, honestly, because like my perspective here in like rural Ohio, and, I'm not that far away from a state like West Virginia. How often do people talk about like conservation project happening in Ohio, West Virginia? Like, we don't ever talk about that stuff. Like, you'll see maybe one article a quarter on, MeatEater or Field and Stream or Outdoor Life that talks about, stuff. But by God, if someone's going to dam a stream in, Wyoming, it's all over the place. And you got to call your senators and and it's like, okay, great. But all these guys in the Midwest and the South, like you said, we are not even, most of them can't even afford to go out West. We will never go out West to hunt or fish or do anything. So just the level of attention I think some things get versus other things, it's, I think, kind of a problem and stuff that I would love, but there's no data to support that really. So it's like, guy who lives in the mountain town of West Virginia, is he really calling his state representative to talk about you should not, pass this roadless rule in Colorado? No, because like you said, he's not benefiting from it. Mm-hmm. So there's no real gain for him to do any additional work on his part. So
yeah,
very interesting topic.
Yeah. What else you got? How do people follow the field review? What type of stuff do you get on there? And then any other pitches you want to do?
Yeah, I mean, the field review is something I started last year, kind of just something to put my thoughts down. And it's not even outdoor related. I call it the intersection of work, life, and the outdoors, which is where I spend all of my time basically between.
You're a real person, you're not an influencer.
Yeah, exactly. No influencers. Like I said, I'm not even in the outdoor industry anymore. So this is all kind of just stuff that I'm really passionate about. It's what I think about when I'm not at work or not spending time with my wife or my new baby. So yeah, really every Sunday publish an article on something I think is valuable. And if someone else kind of picks up on a nugget of that or relates to that experience, that's the best thing I can ask for. But right, the field review, Scout Studio, Scout, whatever you want to call it, is getting geared up here. So trying to get as many people signed up into that platform as possible. And then we'll start really getting off the road on studies and questions. And right now working on reframing that newsletter. So what does that look like? Is it a weekly publication? Is it a monthly publication? Kind of figuring out all those foundational stuff right now.
Mm-hmm. That trail cam photo you published, those two whitetails, those are just really good, clean looking whitetails. When I think of whitetails, that's what I think of. I don't think about those whitetails that have so many points. They look like they have a stinking weed growing on top of their head or something. Those are just really good, clean looking, nice bucks you got on there.
Yeah. So those are, I got access to a new property this year. So those are at that new property where I hunted. I went out last Saturday, was our season opener. Just hunted for about an hour and a half while the kid was still sleeping, got back. But it was a good morning. Saw a bunch of does, no bucks. But I'm very excited to see kind of what that property has in store for me this year. So
yeah, that's nice to have the amp. The trail cam is so important. There are times when you just feel like there's nothing out there, but if you have evidence that there's something around, it changes the amp so much.
yeah, exactly. So I'm excited. It's I don't know, we're within deer season again, so all is good in the world, it seems like.
Awesome. Well, cool, man. It was great chat with you. I got so many questions. I could probably talk forever about this, but we'll have to check back in and we'll be in touch.
Yeah. Yep. I appreciate you having me on.
Cool. Thanks, man.
Yep.